Port of Houston, Texas, October 12th, 2022. During a routine cargo inspection at dawn, United States Customs agents discover an anomaly that would trigger one of the largest criminal investigations in maritime history. One of the sealed freight containers from a Colombia-bound vessel has been properly logged in the port's computerized tracking system, but is nowhere to be found on site, despite electronic records confirming it was offloaded from the ship the previous night during standard cargo processing operations. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Like, if you're ready for a story that will change how you think about airline security, and comment below with your city so I know where my viewers are watching from around the world. The shipping manifest lists the container's contents as industrial air filters destined for export customers in South America, but federal investigators suspect the actual cargo consisted of $17.8 million in cartel cash that had been vacuum sealed in waterproof bricks and hidden inside hollowed-out equipment designed to fool routine customs inspections. The money represented drug profits collected from distribution networks throughout Texas, Louisiana, and other Gulf Coast states, where cartel operations had established sophisticated money laundering systems. Security footage from the port's south gate is mysteriously corrupted between 2 a.m. and 2:15 a.m., precisely when the container vanished from the facility without triggering any alarms or generating electronic records that would document its removal. The 15-minute gap in surveillance coverage was not discovered until hours later, when investigators began searching for the missing container, suggesting that whoever was responsible for the theft understood the port's security systems well enough to disable them temporarily. The name signed off on the last official inspection of the missing container belongs to Sam Torres, a 51-year-old dock container inspector with 30 years of experience in Gulf Coast shipping operations and 18 years as a certified inspector responsible for examining cargo that entered and exited one of America's busiest ports. Samuel Torres grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas, where the shipping industry dominated the local economy and provided steady employment for working-class families willing to accept the physical demands and irregular schedules required by port operations that functioned 24 hours a day throughout the year. His father had worked as a longshoreman for 25 years, and Sam learned early that maritime work offered good wages and job security for people who were reliable, punctual, and willing to follow safety protocols that could mean the difference between life and death in an environment filled with heavy machinery and dangerous cargo. After graduating from high school, Sam found entry-level employment at the Port of Corpus Christi, where he spent 12 years learning the complex procedures involved in processing international cargo shipments that required coordination between shipping companies, customs officials, and federal agencies responsible for preventing smuggling and terrorism. His attention to detail and thorough understanding of regulations made him valuable to supervisors who needed inspectors capable of identifying discrepancies in documentation, detecting concealed contraband, and ensuring compliance with security requirements. Sam moved to Houston in 2004 when he was offered a position as a certified container inspector at the Port of Houston, one of the largest and busiest shipping facilities in the United States. The promotion represented a significant increase in salary and responsibility, giving Sam access to restricted areas and confidential information about cargo movements that required the highest levels of security clearance and personal integrity. For 18 years, Sam worked as a container inspector with a reputation for following protocol to the letter and maintaining the professional standards expected of federal employees who were responsible for protecting American borders from criminal organizations attempting to smuggle drugs, weapons, and other contraband through commercial shipping channels. His supervisors described him as someone who never cut corners, never missed details, and never compromised security procedures, even when pressured by shipping companies that wanted to expedite cargo processing. Outside of work, Sam was known to colleagues as quiet, punctual, and boring in the way that made him forgettable to people who preferred more social coworkers. He was divorced with no children, lived alone in a rented recreational vehicle parked at a mobile home lot near the port, and maintained a lifestyle that revolved entirely around his work responsibilities. Sam never drank alcohol, didn't socialize with coworkers outside of required meetings, and never called in sick during his entire career as a federal employee. But Sam had one secret that he had managed to conceal from his employers and security investigators. He was deeply in debt with over $90,000 owed to creditors who were demanding payment for loans related to a failed family business that had consumed his savings and damaged his credit rating. The financial pressure had been building for years as Sam struggled to make minimum payments while living on a government salary that was insufficient to cover both his basic living expenses and the debt obligations that threatened to destroy his financial future. United States law enforcement agencies had been quietly tracking cartel money laundering operations that used Gulf Coast ports as transportation routes for moving drug profits from American cities back to criminal organizations in Mexico and South America. Intelligence gathered through undercover operations and communications intercepts had revealed that cartel money was being repackaged into industrial goods like filters, pumps, and HVAC units that could be exported without attracting the detailed scrutiny that customs officials applied to shipments that appeared suspicious. The Port of Houston was under particular surveillance by federal agencies because its size and volume of international traffic made it attractive to criminal organizations that needed to move large amounts of cash without detection. But the cartels had learned to rely on trusted internal contacts who could provide advance warning about inspections, tip them off about increased security measures, and help them identify shipping routes that were less likely to be subjected to intensive examination. Sam's position as a container inspector gave him unrestricted access to cargo staging manifests that showed which containers were scheduled for inspection, live GPS tracking systems that monitored the location of every container within the port facility, and offloading schedules that revealed when specific shipments would be moved from ships to temporary storage areas. Most importantly, Sam had the authority to reroute individual containers for additional inspection without triggering computerized alarms that would alert supervisors to unusual activities. Port records show that Sam worked a double shift on October 11th, volunteering for overtime duties that were common during busy periods when regular staff were unavailable due to illness or vacation schedules. At 1:38 a.m., he manually logged an unmarked security inspection on container X2994, the shipping container that contained $17.8 million in cartel cash disguised as industrial air filtration equipment. The container was last electronically pinged in Yard 6, a temporary storage area where cargo was held pending final inspection and transfer to outbound transportation. But it was never recorded as being scanned into the final storage facility where containers awaited loading onto trucks or trains for delivery to their ultimate destinations. Instead of following normal processing procedures, the container simply disappeared from the port's tracking systems. At exactly 2 a.m., the port's camera system experienced a technical malfunction that affected surveillance coverage in the area where container X2994 had been located. The malfunction lasted for 15 minutes, during which time no electronic records documented any vehicle movements or personnel activities in the affected areas. By 4:15 a.m., all cameras were back online and functioning normally, but container X2994 was nowhere to be found, despite intensive searches by port security personnel. The next morning, Sam failed to report for his scheduled shift, marking the first unexcused absence in his 18-year career as a federal employee. When supervisors attempted to contact him by phone and radio, they received no response from a man who had never before been unreachable during work hours. A search of his assigned locker revealed that he had removed all personal belongings, except for his work gloves and security badge, suggesting that his absence was planned, rather than the result of an emergency or accident. The Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the case within hours of discovering that the missing container had been connected to cartel money laundering operations that were already under federal surveillance. FBI agents immediately began investigating Sam's background, financial situation, and recent activities to determine whether he had acted alone or was part of a larger conspiracy involving other port employees or criminal organizations. Key findings from the FBI investigation revealed that Sam had purchased a used moving truck 5 days before the theft, using false identification documents and paying cash to avoid creating electronic records that could be traced back to his real identity. The truck was discovered abandoned and professionally cleaned 70 miles west of Houston at a truck stop near San Antonio, where it had been left in a location that was not covered by surveillance cameras. Despite intensive forensic examination, investigators found no fingerprints, DNA evidence, or other traces that could provide information about who had been driving the truck or where they had gone after abandoning the vehicle. The only evidence was tire tracks that matched the truck's specifications and traces of steel freight cable in the cargo area that suggested the vehicle had been used to transport a shipping container. Sam had completely vanished without leaving any electronic trail through credit card transactions, cell phone usage, or other activities that would normally allow law enforcement agencies to track a fugitive's movements. A neighbor at the mobile home park where Sam had been living reported seeing him towing a small trailer behind an unfamiliar vehicle on the evening before his disappearance, but the neighbor could not provide detailed descriptions of either the vehicle or trailer that would help investigators identify them. 2 weeks after the theft, Mexican law enforcement agencies raided a warehouse in Matamoros that was suspected of being connected to Gulf Cartel money laundering operations. Although no cash was discovered during the raid, investigators found detailed maps of American port facilities, personnel lists containing names, and personal information about customs officials and port employees, and operational documents that revealed the extent of cartel intelligence gathering about American border security procedures. Sam's name appeared on a list of port staff members that had been marked with red ink, with his name both circled and crossed out in a way that suggested he had been identified as either a potential recruit or a security threat. The documents did not provide clear evidence about whether Sam had been working voluntarily with the cartel, had been recruited through threats or financial incentives, or had acted independently to steal the money for his own benefit. Federal investigators developed 3 theories about Sam's involvement in the theft and his subsequent disappearance. The first theory suggested that Sam had planned and executed the theft entirely on his own, using his access and knowledge of port security procedures to steal the money and escape before his crime was discovered. This theory was supported by his financial difficulties and his careful preparation of false identification and transportation resources. The second theory proposed that Sam had been recruited by the cartel as an inside source who was supposed to facilitate the theft, but had instead decided to steal the money for himself, double-crossing both his employers and his criminal contacts. This theory would explain the sophisticated planning and execution of the theft, as well as Sam's ability to disappear so completely after committing the crime. The third theory suggested that Sam had been working as a cartel operative for an extended period, providing intelligence about port security and customs procedures, and that the theft was part of a larger operation designed to test or disrupt American law enforcement capabilities. Under this scenario, Sam's disappearance would have been arranged by the cartel to protect their investment in a valuable asset. Despite a nationwide manhunt that included cooperation between federal agencies, state police, and international law enforcement organizations, Sam Torres has never been found, and no credible sightings have been reported by law enforcement or criminal informants. The $17.8 million in stolen cartel cash has never been recovered, and no evidence has been discovered that would indicate what happened to the money after it was removed from the Port of Houston. The case remains officially open in FBI files as an active investigation, with federal agents continuing to follow leads and monitor intelligence sources that might provide information about Sam's location or the disposition of the stolen money. The theft has become a case study for federal agencies responsible for port security, demonstrating how a single corrupt employee with appropriate access and knowledge can compromise operations that are considered secure against external threats. Port security procedures at Houston and other major shipping facilities have been upgraded in response to the theft, with new protocols requiring multiple inspectors to sign off on container movements, enhanced surveillance systems that are more difficult to disable or circumvent, and improved background investigation procedures for employees who have access to sensitive cargo and security information. The cartel organizations that lost the money have reportedly continued their own investigation into Sam's disappearance, offering substantial rewards for information that could lead to the recovery of their cash and the identification of anyone who might have assisted in the theft. The ongoing interest from both law enforcement and criminal organizations suggests that Sam remains at risk, regardless of where he might be hiding. Somewhere in the world, a quiet man who once inspected shipping containers for the federal government may be living comfortably on money that represents the accumulated suffering of thousands of drug users whose addiction funded the profits he stole. Samuel Torres has become a ghost in an industry where people are accustomed to the constant movement of cargo and personnel. Proof that sometimes the most effective criminals are those who understand the systems they are trusted to protect.